Hey guys, it's Anthony from So I Heard You Like Wrestling. Just a little disclaimer before the interview starts. As you can tell, there's a few things different about this video compared to the other So I Heard You Like Wrestling episodes in the past. For starters, it's on my personal channel, not the So I Heard You Like Wrestling channel. And the format's going to be a little different because all this is a little 15-minute interview with a wrestler that I was able to get. And usually the show is a weekly review of like Raw and SmackDown, pay-per-views, past events that we went to. But this will just be me. There's no Ian or Justin in this video. The So I Heard You Like Wrestling show itself, it's been on hiatus since the 2017 year-end awards show. That was the very last show that we did in the end of December, rather. And the show itself isn't coming back, but I had to do a radio project in college, and it involved getting a 15-minute interview with a guest of your choice. And I decided to play the host for it. And with my love of wrestling, the first thing I thought of was, let me get an interview with an independent wrestler about their views as a wrestler. And I figured that I'd get a women's wrestler because so much has happened recently in the world of women's wrestling and women's sports. And I decided, why not? I'll get an interview with a women's wrestler. And I'm fortunate enough to have a great connection with my guest, who was nice enough to come to my college and do this interview that you guys are about to hear. I would like to hopefully do more of these things in the future, like even if it's just on my own channel, or I start up a new channel where I just get interviews, whether it just be audio-based or with video, or whether it's, 10 minutes or maybe like a full hour-long podcast type deal or half hour. But really hope you guys like this interview. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. Don't forget to like and share and subscribe. So, without further ado, enjoy the interview with just one of the boys, Delmi Exo.
Now get ready for your host,
What is your name?
Anthony.
Today we are interviewing Delmi Medrano, known professionally as Delmi Exo, female pro wrestler. She's part of the wrestling duo Team C-Stars. She is also the current NWE Women's Champion. She's been wrestling for 3 years. We will discuss her origins to where she is now as a wrestler. Delmi, thanks for coming with us today.
Hi, Anthony. Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll get right into question one. Personally, my favorite wrestler of all time that I looked up to when I was growing up was Shawn Michaels.
I will give you a show like you have never, ever seen before. Why? Because I can.
Who in wrestling did you look up to growing up?
Well, I always loved Eddie Guerrero. He was Mexican, and I just related to that for obvious reasons. Triple H, Undertaker, Tajiri, guys like that, really.
When did you decide you wanted to be a wrestler?
I wanted to be a wrestler when I was little, just because my sister was a huge influence on everything we did. So she had the remote, so we would watch wrestling, and she was like, "We're gonna be wrestlers," and I was like, "Okay." So, and then during my middle school and high school years, I fell off of the fandom, and then we ended up finding it on later on the independent scene, and we were like, "Oh wow, this is actually possible. You can actually wrestle. You don't have to get signed by WWE. You can go a different route."
What age did you start training?
I started training at 17. It was the summer before senior year.
So your sister was already wrestling at this point. So what did your family and close friends think of you wrestling as well?
We actually signed up at the same time. So, yeah, everyone thinks that she started first because she's older, but we started at the same time. And it was kind of funny. It was you guys are both doing this. She's more naturally athletic than I am. So when people saw me doing it, they were like, "Oh, you're going to get hurt. Stop."
You were tuned in to So I Heard You Like Wrestling. We are talking with NWE Women's Champion and Team C-Stars member Delmi Exo about her beginnings as a female wrestler. Was there always a sense that you were going to be a wrestler, or did everyone think it was just a phase?
I think everyone thought it was just a phase because, yeah, I was always sick as a kid. I was never someone who could do sports or join sports. And when I was like, hey, I'm going to be a wrestler, the most extreme sport you can pick out there, literally it's known for head injuries, breaking bones, things like that. And it's oh God, what are you doing? What are you getting yourself into?
Probably the first vivid memory I have of wrestling was when Batista powerbombed Triple H through a table on Raw. This is the moment that really drew me in. What was the moment in wrestling that drew you in?
I don't have like a specific moment just because I was always sick growing up. So I just remember it always being on. I don't have anything that's like, oh, this is when I started watching. I more remember playing the video game than like the first time I like started watching it. Like I can't remember a clip or anything like that. But
What was the hardest thing about training when you first started?
everything. Like I said, I'm not naturally athletic by any means, so bumping took me like the first 6 months. I remember my trainer would just whip me off and clothesline me, like pick me up, whip me off, clothesline me until I finally like got it right. Up and overs were hard, and I just like I kept practicing, and I was like, well, this isn't gonna be easy, so.
All right. And just a quick yes or no question. Are you happy with your current life as a professional wrestler?
Yes, definitely. I mean, like everything's like finally turning to a certain positivity. Like looking forward to other things. I've like left places that I wasn't happy in and moved on to working like different places.
From training to getting in the ring, don't go anywhere. Hear what Delmi Exo has to say about her struggles as a female wrestler on Tech Radio.
Back to your host, Anthony.
We're talking with Delmi Exo and her journey as a female pro wrestler from her first match and beyond. Every wrestler has a story on how they got their name.
My wife at the time was from England, and at the time she made me a cup of hot tea. She put it on the table, and she said, well, don't worry about it. You'll come up with something. Just go ahead and drink your tea before it gets stone cold. That's your name, Stone Cold Steve Austin. So that's how that name was born.
How did you come up with your wrestling name, Delmi Exo?
So EXO is actually a K-pop boy band, and the funny joke to me is that they took forever to debut. Same with me. It took me like almost 2 years before I finally got my first match. So it's just kind of like my own insider joke of like, haha.
How was it decided who your first match was going to be against?
My first match was against Toxis at PvP, and it was just kind of decided because they needed someone to put her over. Really.
How did it feel when it was all over?
It felt great. Like as soon as I stepped out of the curtain, there was so much adrenaline that rushed through me, and like finally getting the first one out of the way was like, okay, cool. Like it's over with.
When did you start teaming with your sister Ashley?
We started teaming in October of 2015, I want to say, or 2016, around there. And we just started teaming. We didn't have matching gear. We didn't know what we were doing, but we just kind of went with it, and people bought into it, so we were thankful for that.
You're listening to So I Heard You Like Wrestling on Tech Radio. We are speaking with female wrestler Delmi Exo about her life being a professional wrestler and how she promotes herself. I was going through YouTube and came across a video of a debut promo between yourself, and your sister Ashley as a tag team.
Ashley Vox, Poseidon Siren, Delmi Exo, the Galaxy Demigod will arrive as Team C-Stars, the most forceful tag team on this planet.
Where did the name and gimmick of Team C-Stars come from?
So I had a lisp for a long, long time, and every time I would try to call my sister like sister, like, oh, what's up, sister? I would say C-Star, and it was just like so embarrassing, and she would cringe every time, and she just despised me because I was this little girl and she wanted a brother.
With the exception of your sister, who's your favorite wrestler to work with?
I would say Davian is one of my favorite just because she's hard hitting, and it's like it brings out a different intensity from you.
How's the travel schedule been for you?
It's been brutal. Last other time that we did something crazy was we went to Maine from Rhode Island and then straight down to New York to pull up another female wrestler, and then from there just right to North Carolina. No sleep, just straight balling.
Do you have any type of agent or all bookings through you?
All bookings are through like me and my sister. We don't have any agents. We don't really believe in anything like that.
How would you describe it, what it's like to promote yourself, whether it be applying to bookings, merchandise, etc.?
It's actually really fun because you get to like play both sides. You get to be like, oh, like this is a promotion, and like you can promote things and like how you want to be portrayed instead of someone else like portraying you in a way that you're like, oh, like no, don't put that there. Like that's embarrassing. Like you can determine it.
What's your biggest struggle of being a pro wrestler?
I would say just like sometimes the energy or the drama that comes with it, like there's always going to be a different vibe coming off from different people. You just have to choose to ignore it.
All right, and just another quick yes or no question. Would you eventually like to end up in the WWE?
Yes, definitely.
All right, so this is So I Heard You Like Wrestling. Our subject today is wrestling, and we're talking with Delmi Exo. Coming up, we talk about the real and the fake on Tech Radio. If you're just joining us, we have Delmi Exo here. She is a female professional wrestler, NWE champion, and we are discussing her goals for the future in wrestling. I'm sure you're no stranger to the biggest controversy when it comes to professional wrestling, and that is real versus fake. One of my favorite takes on the subject was that given by director Max Landis in his short film, Wrestling Isn't Wrestling.
Wrestling is melodrama. Wrestling is mythology. Wrestling is action. Wrestling is comic books. The only thing wrestling isn't is wrestling.
What would you say is the biggest misconception about wrestling?
I would say that, like, so many people ask me, like, oh, but doesn't it hurt? And it's kind of annoying because, like, whenever you see someone performing sport, you never ask them, like, oh, but doesn't football hurt when you get tackled? It's just, like, obviously, but, like, you become callous to the pains that of the businesses that you put yourself in. Like, if you really like something, you just overcome things that come with it, and, like, you just worry about the good more than the bad.
When did you find out that professional wrestling was scripted?
Honestly, like, a month into my training, I was like, so, like, how do you like win? And they were like, oh, the promoter determines that.
At the beginning of all the WWE DVDs, they usually present a warning to not try this at home.
Broken bones, torn muscles, dislocations, separations. Be smart, be safe. Don't try this at home.
Is there any specific bump you've taken or injury you had that sticks out the most?
Thankfully, so far, the only thing I've done is, like, broken a tooth or, like, chipped a tooth. My sister did break her jaw, but I think I just take my vitamins and say my prayers, to be honest.
What's the biggest goal that you have that you want to set for yourself in 2018 in your wrestling career?
Well, my biggest goal was, like, to work for Chikara, and that happened early on. So now I'm just trying to work in Japan, and that's, like, my biggest goal so far.
Our guest on So I Heard You Like Wrestling, Delmi Exo, is here, and she's discussing what's next after wrestling. What would you say your biggest dream match you'd like to accomplish this year is?
I'm really, like, odd with having dream matches just because I'm like, oh, I can't jinx it. So if there is something, I won't even think about it for a while. So,
as it seems both yourself and Ashley are receiving more singles exposure, what does the future hold for Team Sea Stars?
I think the cool thing about Team Sea Stars is that we are legitimate sisters. So it's not like the tag team will ever be disbanded for reals. Like, even if we argue, we make up in, like, an hour. So it's always going to live.
What other hobbies do you have that you think you could pursue as a career, along with or outside of wrestling?
I do enjoy, like, bodybuilding, and I'm working to compete in a figure competition at some point this year. So I'm not really sure if that's, like, a career, but that would be something.
You have a plan for whenever you decide to step away from wrestling?
I don't really have, like, a super big plan, but, I mean, I'm really into fitness and things like that, so I'm sure I'll find a way to survive.
Is there any other places or promotions you'd like to wrestle for this year?
I would like to wrestle for a few places out of New England. Nothing, like, super specific, just get out of the area more.
Do you know how long you'd like to be in the wrestling business, or do you think you'd always be involved for the foreseeable future?
I think I'll always be involved in wrestling. It's a special place in my heart, so.
All right, and just one final yes or no question. Based on your experience today, would you come back to the show again?
Yes, definitely.
All right, thanks, Delmi, for hanging with us today. Be sure to tune in next week for So I Heard You Like Wrestling.
This is So I Heard You Like Wrestling Radio.
You will worship me!
Follow us on our blog, and as always, tune in tomorrow for even more talk on wrestling.
Thank you very much, and have a nice day.